We have some huge news to go over today as NBA insider Shams Charania has just dropped a bombshell new trade report that has huge implications on the Lakers and Rob Pelinka's pursuit of one particular player. We're going to break down exactly what this report is and discuss what it means going forward, as well as a bunch of other Lakers updates on this episode, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Lakers content. Thank you guys for your continued support over here. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot to go over today. And obviously, the Lakers have been heavily involved in a lot of different trade talks already this season. But some new reports have dropped revealing some very interesting information. And Shams has just dropped a huge report. Now, he dropped an article as well as a tweet surrounding, of course, Anthony Davis. And you can see at the top, now this part isn't relevant to the Lakers as much, but it's important to note. So the Mavericks are shopping Anthony Davis, and the Pistons, the Hawks, and the Raptors are expected to be the suitors. Now, within that, and that was, of course, the big report that took not a lot of people off guard, but, really highlighted the market for the, for the star in Anthony Davis. But within this article, you can see here, the Mavericks are open to exploring the trade markets for Daniel Gafford, Klay Thompson, and D'Angelo Russell as well, which is very, very interesting. If you've been following the channel for a while here, they have been in the pursuit of Daniel Gafford, Lakers it is, for a while. They've been involved, rather, in a lot of trade talks for Mr. Gafford, but nothing has materialized quite yet. Of course, up until this point, Rob Pelinka in the offseason kind of held on to his assets. But this is very notable. This is the first time that a full report has dropped revealing that Daniel Gafford is available, among many others on the Mavericks, not named Kyrie Irving and Cooper Flagg, which now makes the whole trade market that much more intriguing. Now, at this point, the Lakers are playing really good basketball. They're not super, in need of a backup center per se. Obviously, they're in need of a guy like, Jackson Hayes. They already have a guy like Jackson Hayes. They don't necessarily need a backup center. However, Daniel Gafford is a really good one, and that has led to an article that dropped here. Forget Giannis, cheaper Luka law partner emerges for the Lakers. Now, I don't think Giannis is going to get traded to the Lakers, but it basically goes on to say that Shams Charania has revealed that the Mavericks are open to trading Daniel Gafford, and that Daniel Gafford viewed as a strong fit for the Lakers because of their system, because of the way JJ Redick plays, and most importantly, or rather the way JJ Redick coaches, but most importantly, because he's a former teammate of Luka Doncic. But it's not just Shams. Recently, NBA insider Jake Fisher reported in his most recent Bleacher Report article and Insider's Notebook that the Lakers are prioritizing a vertical lob threat who can anchor the P and R. The Lakers are undoubtedly going to be looking for a long-term pick-and-roll threat pairing for Luka Doncic and Austin Reaves, but particularly for Luka Doncic. And who better to go after than for someone who has had massive success? Of course, they made it to the finals in Daniel Gafford, and it's very interesting. Contractually, the timing favors movement. Gafford's 3-year, $54 million extension was structured specifically with trade flexibility in mind. So you pair the report from Jake Fisher, a notable reporter, with the report from Shams, which is obviously the guy. He is the most notable reporter. You're now setting yourself up for a very, very interesting play to be made here by the Los Angeles Lakers. And this is where things become interesting because people are now starting to speculate. You can see here, look for the Lakers to look in on Luka's best friend, Daniel Gafford. Now, there is a few contingencies here. Now, obviously, the Lakers already fleeced the Mavericks once. Would it make sense for the Mavericks to trade back with the Lakers? There is that kind of, obstacle here and that roadblock of, hey, maybe we don't go out and we don't, want to trade if you're the Mavericks. Obviously, it's not Nico Harrison anymore. He got fired, but you don't want to trade with the Lakers because of that and the way the optics would look. That is something to keep in mind. But at the end of the day, if the Lakers have the best package, which we'll dive into, they'll trade with the Lakers, I think. Now, this was a tweet from a while ago, but it highlights what a package would look like. Now, this is from Jovan Buha, I think a few weeks ago, maybe even a few months ago, but I want to bring this up because it's just as relevant now. The Lakers would probably have to overpay if they want to get Daniel Gafford. They probably would have to overpay. It would be something like Gabe Vincent, Dalton, Knecht, and a first-round pick for Gafford, and that's a lot. And that's the same package that has been proposed lately to the New Orleans Pelicans for Herb Jones. So then you ask yourself, if it's going to cost a first-round pick, probably a 2031 first-round pick anyway, would you rather go after a guy like Herb Jones or would you rather go after a guy like Daniel Gafford? And to me, Herb Jones fills a bigger need, especially with how good DeAndre Ayton has been this year. And obviously, Daniel Gafford would probably play backup power forward, backup center. But that's what it would be, right? It would be a hefty, hefty package. Now, in the same vein, it's very interesting because the Lakers, we know how good DeAndre Ayton has been, but defensively, he's tried and he's put more effort and put a good foot forward, but he hasn't been quite as good as a guy like Daniel Gafford would be, and he would help anchor the defense. But the question mark remains then, if the Lakers are going to go out and get a guy like Daniel Gafford, do you then have enough remaining assets to fill your actual biggest hole, which is perimeter defense, right? And you look at their current roster right now. You have Luka, Reaves, Rui, LeBron, Ayton. That has been their starting lineup that has seen a ton of success with or without LeBron James in it. Marcus Smart's been out now for a little bit with an injury. He's obviously their best perimeter defender. Do you really need another backup center behind Jackson Hayes? They have Drew Timme in the woodworks, who's been playing really well down there, and he's on a two-way deal between the G League, South Bay Lakers, and of course, playing really well for South Bay, I believe, but also, of course, with the actual team, he hasn't gotten any run yet, or significant run, rather. Do you need to have another center? Obviously, Daniel Gafford would help, right? You'd have two really solid guys. Daniel Gafford's a great rebounder, a great defender, or rather a good defender. But Jackson Hayes almost fills that role, and I think the gap between, a backup center compared to the gap you would really be filling by getting Herb Jones, that's the biggest question mark, especially with kind of the way like Daniel Gafford has played this year, which is pretty solid. At the time of this article, he was, interesting, about 8.9 points, 6 rebounds. So he's averaging under 10 a game. Would he require a first-round pick? That's what it's going to come down to. If it's the same as the offseason, where, again, he was valued a bit more at the time of this tweet, I wouldn't give up a first-round pick for him. I would give up Gabe Vincent, Dalton, Knecht, and maybe a second or maybe a first-round pick swap or something like that. But beyond that, I wouldn't do it because you have had really good success for DeAndre Ayton. This isn't the same situation as last year where you had no starting center, right? You had Jackson Hayes, who was really filling in a role once Anthony Davis left. You're in a pretty good spot center-wise right now. And it's not their biggest concern. There's always areas to improve, but I don't think Rob Pelinka is going to go after, that if that's the price. Where you have a guy like DeAndre Ayton who's already doing solid. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. A very unique scenario. And Ayton, he hasn't been horrible defensively. Of course, he's never going to be favored in the advanced analytics, but he's still averaging a block a game and doing things like that. And you have Ayton, who's kind of taken over as that spot. So let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. Things are getting quite interesting. Now, as you look ahead to their schedule, you obviously, they're playing here against the San Antonio Spurs, against the Utah Jazz. They have a pretty interesting schedule ahead. Now, obviously, it all starts tomorrow against the Spurs, of course. But then going up against Utah and the Clippers and Phoenix, in theory, there should be some games where you can start to make a little bit of ground up in the Western Conference. Are they ever going to catch and obviously it's a cup game tomorrow, but are they ever going to catch the Thunder? Probably not. They're a quote-unquote super team, at least at this point, though, a homegrown super team. You got to take care of business here, all right? And these trade talks are going to continue to escalate and percolate. And as those things are happening, if you win, you give Rob Pelinka the green light to go out and make some of these moves, whether that be Daniel Gafford, whether that be a guy like Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, others that are going to emerge. And it's interesting because some other teams are interested in AD. The good news is, within this report, all Eastern Conference teams. But that'll wrap it up. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on this, folks. Things are really starting to get interesting. We'll keep you up to date every step of the way. You guys are absolute beasts. Thank you guys for watching. See you later. Cheers.